Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a great pleasure to see all of you here. I think today is a quite special day because for the first time in many years, we see so many market professionals coming together to discuss Baltic capital markets, to generate new ideas, to network, and to try to make our market better. Needless to say that capital markets help economies to grow, help companies to raise financing, help investors to earn some money and increase their capital. But the bad news is that in the Baltics, it's a commonplace to say that in the Baltics we have not managed to realize this potential yet. But it's also a good news. The good news is that we are in the beginning of this nice journey, and I'm sure that after some years we're going to have much bigger and much more active Baltic capital market. So today we'll try to answer a number of questions and generate new ideas on how to make this process quicker and more effective. Today, talking about the agenda, today we have a number of panels. First of all, we will address issues related to the stock market. What are the potentials of the Baltics IPO? We have some nice stories, some nice case studies to discuss. Then we will go to the debt markets, and there we also have some nice stories and quite good issuers which have managed to raise financing through the bond instruments listed on the stock exchange. Then we're going to have lunch, and after lunch we're going to have two more panels discussing institutional investors' appetite for the Baltic risk. We all know that recent geopolitical developments have created some turbulence in international investors' appetites towards the Baltics, and we all know that financial markets this year were not so good as they were in the last couple of years. So it's quite challenging, in my opinion, to convince international investors to invest in the Baltic equities and bonds, but definitely there are opportunities as well. And then we're going to talk about retail investors' appetite. Retail investors have been a very important driving force behind the Baltic capital markets in the recent years. And I think it's going to be a very interesting panel to discuss how much this appetite is going to continue in the years to come. And then in the end, we'll touch on ESG issues, and we'll have some discussions also about the life on the capital markets before and after IPO, how companies feel after they have managed to list their bonds or equities to raise financing, how challenging the administrative burden is for these companies to be listed. So I hope we're going to have a very productive day, and I hope by joining forces we'll make our Baltic capital markets a much better place for everybody. And on this positive note, I would like to invite on the stage Girts Ruda, member of the Council of the Financial Capital Market Commission, who will open the conference.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Dear organizers of the conference, dear ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I'm delighted to join this conference on Baltic capital markets, the timing of which could not be more fitting. In the first 9 months of 2022, financial markets saw faltering recoveries, increased volatility, and market corrections. Just last month, European Securities and Markets Authority warned that risks remain very high in securities market and for asset management matters. During these turbulent times, it is important to have effective capital market who works for all. Thus, in turn, we need a vision and a plan to come out of this crisis more resilient, more stronger, more dynamic. At the Latvian Financial and Capital Markets Commission, we believe that well-functioning capital market is even more important now to ensure possibilities to raise capital for market participants so that they can grow in Latvia and elsewhere. With this idea in mind, almost 2 years ago, we have started a 10-step program for the development of Latvian capital market. Let me remind you that this program has 3 main cornerstones: reduction of regulatory burden, development of investor base, and attraction of new market players. It's good to know that we have already successfully implemented several capital markets development ideas, like starting securities sandbox for potential issuers, improvement of corporate governance standards, and launching Latvian Corporate Governance Award, implementation in our daily life, consult at first principle, and better cooperation among the capital market regulators in 3 Baltic states to unify the regulation and implementation. Last but not least, various supervising activities are aimed to protect investors and improve financial literacy. Let me give you 3 numbers which show good developments in our market. This year, more than 174 million euros have been raised through Latvian capital markets, through IPO of Indexo and bond issues. There are 2 times more retail investors participating in capital markets in 2021 compared to the year before. And finally, as Latvians say, 3 are the good numbers. We have now 3 companies who have applied to securities sandbox. Once again, I would like to dispel the myth that the capital market is opportunity only for high growth or large companies. We have seen examples in the market that medium-sized companies with investment needs can successfully attract investment. For example, Madara and Given Jewelry. I think that all this represents that we are on the right path, but in order to create better market conditions, we cannot do it alone. We need active market participants who are willing to dedicate efforts to improve our market. This is why I'm very thankful to the organizers of this conference, which I believe will be very beneficial to all participants. We are also thankful to all market participants who are engaged in dialogue with us, who help to improve investment climate and corporate governance in Latvia. We hope to hear today from you both brand new ideas and also well-thought ideas on how we can improve local or even EU capital market. From the Commission side, I can assure you that capital market is and will remain one of our strategic priorities. Ladies and gentlemen, we live in a challenging and constantly changing situation in the world, and it's hard to predict what the future will bring to us. Yet, we at the Latvian Financial and Capital Market Commission are optimists and believe in good and prosperous capital market because, as Winston Churchill has said, the pessimist sees difficulty in every opportunity, but the optimist sees opportunity in every difficulty. We have an exciting future to work for, all of us together. I wish you all very productive and interesting day. Thank you.
Thank you, Girts. And now that the conference is open, I would like to invite on stage Bjorn Sibbern, President of European Capital Markets of Nasdaq. We're going to have a bit unusual format. So I'm going to be asking questions, and Bjorn going to be giving the answers. So let me start with a very simple question, hopefully simple question. We're here in Riga, in the center of the Baltic countries. Nasdaq is the only stock exchange operating here. So what's your strategy for the coming couple of years in terms of developing local business of Nasdaq?
So first of all, it's great to be here. What an amazing event. I'm Danish. I have not seen such a great setup in Denmark for quite many years as I see here. So first of all, congrats with a fantastic setup. So the strategy for Nasdaq, and if I try to take the Nasdaq European perspective, and when I say Nasdaq European perspective, it is the 3 exchanges in the Baltics. It's the one in Stockholm, it's the one in Denmark, it's the one in Finland, and it's the one in Iceland. So that's what we represent. And talking about the development of financial markets, let me take you a little bit back, 10 years back. We had a lot of discussion in Sweden. Sweden were struggling a little bit. In media, they were out saying, why do we need a stock exchange? There are no listings. The trading is only on the already existing companies. Why do we need a stock exchange? So we, Nasdaq, together with the political parties, with the industry players, companies like you, advisors, pension funds, online brokers, we teamed up and discussed how do we develop the market in Sweden. So all the stakeholders got together, looked at how do we increase retail participation, how do we make it easier to be a listed company, how do we make it more profitable opportunity also for advisors to be in the market. And after a lot of discussion and debate, we created a lot of initiatives to make the capital market in Sweden working even better. And what we see now is we have, last year there was a little bit more than 300 IPOs in Europe. 1/3 of that, more than 100, came out of Stockholm. So after a long journey, looking at how to design, how to develop the capital market in Sweden, this is the most successful market in Europe. And it is not something that is just done overnight. It has been a long journey. But my story here and my point is, Sweden were not perfect. What we are now trying to do, now Sweden is the leading and best performing market when it comes to listings, capital raising. Retail participation is super high. One of the great success stories in Sweden is a special investment saving accounts where the banks report your taxation and you have a low taxation as a holding tax. That has fostered a lot of retail participation in the market. So my point with the story is it takes quite a long time and effort to build a market, to build an equity culture. You talked about there's a lot of potential. So just be prepared if the industry work together, the different players in the industry work together, and over time develop the market, there's a fantastic opportunity. I would also say, yes, we have a super setup in Sweden. We try to copy that concept and export it to Finland with some success. We try to do that in Denmark as well. I'm Danish, I try to do that in Denmark. We only have limited success so far in Denmark. So it is a process, and some of the learnings, findings, success stories from Sweden, we of course also try to export that to the Baltic markets, to the Baltic exchanges that we're running. So I think this is a journey, but I think actually being a part of a bigger exchange group, we see benefits sharing knowledge and success stories and try to export that also to what we do here in the Baltics. And of course, looking at some of the great IPOs we had last year, the biggest IPO last year, Energy Fit, was a fantastic story with 60,000 retail investors. Remember, the biggest IPO we had in Sweden last year was Volvo Cars with 200,000. So relatively, I would claim the one we had last year was even more successful here.
Yeah, really. Thank you for mentioning this example, and that leads to another question from my side. Obviously, it takes both issuers and investors to be active to achieve the growth of the market. How do you see the Baltics dynamics? You mentioned that there is an increasing retail activity, but maybe institutions are not so active yet. But how do you see future evolving? Do you see that retail going to play the most important role in the market, or we're going to see the rise of institutional money coming to the Baltic companies?
Yes, when I look at a well-functioning capital market, you need to think about how do we create the right liquidity pool. You need a setup with retail investors, institutional investors, you need short-term investors, long-term investors. You need local investors and international investors. So you need to create this right liquidity pool to really create a well-functioning capital market. So it's easy to get in and out of your positions. When I look at the stats and the numbers from the Baltic markets, I see retail participation on a daily basis. The trading side is close to 70%. For me, it looks a little bit high versus what I see in other markets. So what we might be a little bit lacking here is the institutional investor side, and it's also maybe more active institutional investors, so more institutional investors and more international investors. And how do you get that? I think a big part of that is also big IPOs. So what we have seen in some of the other markets is when you have a couple of big IPOs, it attracts institutional investors, and when they start to do 1 or 2 trades in the bigger companies, then they move from the large cap companies down to the mid-sized companies. So if there's one thing I probably would hope for, and I think we all would hope for, is a couple of more bigger IPOs in the Baltic markets. That was probably what will help developing the market and attract more international investors and maybe also make the institutional investor base a little bit bigger.
Yeah, I fully agree. Big IPO or big listing of a big company would definitely help in that direction. But talking about the SMEs, which right now is quite a big part of the Nasdaq business in the Baltics, we talk a lot with potential issuers of bonds and equities coming from SME segment, and many of them are quite reluctant to tap the market, citing that administrative burden after the listing is excessive. That's what some of them telling us. Do you think anything needs to be improved in that direction, or how do you see this burden currently and evolving in the future?
Yes, so the burden for listed companies is something we are very mindful about from a Nasdaq point of view. So around 15 years ago, we created something called First North, which is our growth market and a market that is more tailored towards SMEs. So we have our main market, and then we have our First North growth market. And what makes me super proud and happy is when we welcomed, and we had 175 IPOs last year in Nasdaq Nordics, a fantastic number. And again, out of a little bit more than 300 IPOs in Europe, right? So the Nordics really showed the way on listings, especially SMEs. And if you look at our purpose and why we exist, we are here to help companies get access to capital. So think about this small business in Sweden or Finland or in Riga that want to grow into the Nordics or want to grow into the European scene, right? They go to the exchange to get access to capital. They start exporting. They create 3 to 4 more times job than a similar company. Our stat shows that when you get access to capital on the exchange and start your growth journey, you create 3 to 4 times more jobs than a similar company because you have easy access to capital and you have sometimes even high ambitions. So I think that makes me proud to see that we are able to help so many companies on their growth journey. And also for the countries we are in, if you take Finland, where we had around 40 listings last year, we see so many companies going public, and of course that also creates growth and job in Finland. So the story for me is a key part of what we do is actually helping companies access to capital and growth. And of course that will help the companies, the countries to grow as well. So that's something we are super mindful about. First North, our First North segment is tailored towards SMEs, where less regulatory burden, it's a little bit easier. You do not need to have the same free float. So I think that is a perfect setup, and it's something that has worked in the Nordics, also here, for around 15 years, and we're super proud about that. The second part I just want to mention is, what I like about it is also when you take a company public, you also get the retail investors an opportunity to be a part of that growth journey. Instead of putting your money in the bank with low interest rates, you actually have the opportunity to invest in a company, in a growth story, and even have a profit on it. So it's also about democratizing investments by going public.
Yeah, thank you. Fully agree. And a final question I want to take, ESG is quite an unexplored topic, I would say, in the Baltics. Is there anything Nasdaq can help local companies in terms of ESG matters?
Yeah, so ESG, I would say Nasdaq, we have not always been perfect, and what we try to do is we try to listen to the customer needs. So we had one of our biggest institutional investors in Sweden. They came to us 2 years ago and said, you know, we love your big index, the OMX S30, but you need to have an ESG version. So we developed that. So that's one way to have ESG as focus. Mm-hmm. It was not our idea. It was one of our customers' idea. We have had green bonds listed with us with more than 5 years. So, and I know some of you have even green bonds listed at Nasdaq as well. So that's one way for us to do it. Of course, what we are trying to do is also try to help working with standards on what is ESG, because ESG is a broad thing, and we have discussions around greenwashing. So what we try to do is set a standard, try to have some kind of guidance on ESG. At the same time, we do not want to sit and judge a company's ESG journey. We want to have a transparent setup and rules, but then we'll leave it for the companies to explain their ESG journey towards the investor base.
Very good. So I think our time has run out.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Bjorn, for joining the conference, and thank you for this conversation. And good luck.
Thanks for the invitation. It's so great to be here, and on behalf of Nasdaq, it's just so great to see so many customers and companies with us, and we hope to do more business with many of you guys going forward. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thank you.